I have some bad news for you. It's my firm belief that the average churchgoer zones out about 8 seconds into announcements. And how do I know this? It's because I have been up there in the front giving church announcements, and I've watched people's eyes glaze over. After years of announcing events that fewer and fewer people were showing up for, our church discovered something, and I'm gonna show you exactly how we do it because I think it's gonna work for you too. Let's do this. Well, hey guys, I'm Thomas here from Reachright. We put out new content like this every week, so if this is helpful to you, it would mean a lot to me if you'd hit that subscribe button down below. Now, I have no scientific evidence to back this up, but I have a hunch that if you were to poll people in your church what their favorite part of the worship experience was, I bet you would get some people that would say they love the sermon, and then others would say something like, we really love the worship time, but I bet you'd probably get no more than 0 people that say they love the announcements. And the fact is that announcements are just one of those necessary parts of church services. But just because they have to be a part of our weekly service, it doesn't mean that they have to be boring. In fact, we uncovered at our church that if we were intentional about a few very specific things and kept our announcements in a tight window, the experience was better for everybody involved, both the people in the audience and the people giving the announcements. And one mistake I see so many churches make is announcing too many things. We have a hard and fast rule at our church that we never do more than 3 announcements on a typical Sunday. In fact, we try to make that number more like 1 or 2, but if we absolutely need to, or maybe it's a really busy time in our church calendar, we'll allow ourselves as many as 3 announcements. Once we've selected our 2 announcements, then we just have to include them in our 3-minute announcement framework. Every time we do announcements at our church, 3 minutes is the length of time we give ourselves. And there's 2 main components to this 3-minute framework. First is a 1-minute introduction, and then second, we give ourselves 1 minute for each of the other 2 announcements. And within that minute on each announcement, we have a very specific framework. Well, let's start out with the introduction. What do we do in this part? The introduction serves as a chance for you to introduce yourself to people that may not know you yet at the church and invite them to take a first step at your church. I break this first minute really into 3 separate parts. I take 20 seconds to introduce myself, saying something like, hey guys, it's so good for you to be here today. My name is Thomas. I'm one of the pastors here. I serve in our executive role, and it just means so much that you would spend your Sunday morning with us for these next 90 minutes or so. From there, I would move into acknowledging our first-time guests, making sure people know that they're not alone if they're there for the first time. In fact, everybody in your church came for the first time at one point, so just helping people to feel at ease with what that is. We strongly recommend that you give your visitors some kind of a gift when they come for the first time, just to let them know how welcome they are there, but take some time in your announcements to acknowledge them. And then the final step in the introduction is to actually invite a visitor to take a next step. Now, it's our firm recommendation that you give every visitor only 1 next step that they take. Don't make the mistake of saying you can get connected this way here, or sign up in the back, or fill out a card, or text us at this number. Give them 1 way, 1 specific way that they can take a next step and get into the life of the church. Usually, I wind up tying that with whatever that gift is that we were talking about before. It's probably something like, hey, if you fill out this card and take it to the next steps table after service, we have a $10 gift card we want to give to you for a local coffee shop. Some kind of a framework like that works really well. In fact, we have a whole video that we did where I outlined my exact strategy that we use at my church to help first-time visitors get connected. I think you'll probably want to watch this video as well. And once you've tackled the introduction in the announcements and welcomed your guests, you can then move on to announcing some of the specific events. And for this, I have a very specific framework that my team uses here that I invite you to steal from us. We use what we call the feel, spiel, real announcement framework. Let's start out with the feel portion of an announcement. If you want the announcement to work, people need to feel something. That's why you really need to work on the emotional connection that you create in every single announcement. Now, the feel portion is usually something that starts with a story, helping people feel some kind of a connection to you by telling a relatable story that will tie in with the actual announcement that you're about to make. For instance, let's say you're announcing your youth summer camps and trying to get people to sign up for an event. You can start off with a story that says something like, I remember when I was young, one of my favorite things to do with my family was going camping. I still remember making s'mores with my dad, and we had this unique family recipe for it where we used Reese's peanut butter cups instead of traditional Hershey's chocolate. It was totally life-changing. And let me just say this, camp is something that you remember forever, and that's why I want to tell you about, and then you would move into the next phase of the announcement framework. So a story like that, as you can see, immediately draws people in. You start to think for yourself, yeah, I like camping too. Yeah, camping is something that's memorable. And then you would deliver the information about the camp, which brings us to the next step in the framework. It's feel and then spiel. That's where you start to give the details and the information. What so many churches do is they focus all of their announcement on just the spiel portion, talking about where and when and what to bring and how to sign up and getting into the details of those things without making them feel first. But let me be clear about this. The spiel is important. People do need to know the details. So after you've done the story and help people feel that, then you will just say, that's why I'm so excited to tell you about youth camp. It's coming up here. It's happening on June 7th through 9th. It's going to be out at Old Oak Ranch, and you are not going to want to miss it. Giving all those details is so important, and people need to know that information. That's really part of why you're doing it. But don't make the mistake of giving the information without doing the feel part. So there's feel, and then there's spiel, and then there's reel. The next step is to reel someone in. This means inviting them on what they need to do to take the next step to be a part of whatever you're announcing. So in this case, talking about youth camp, you might say something like, if you're interested in signing up for youth camp or maybe getting connected into our youth ministry, well, your next step is to stop by the next steps table. Our youth pastor will be there right after service to answer any questions you may have, and you can go ahead and get signed up right there in the back today, so you won't want to delay. The spots are limited, so I really recommend you stop by there today. So here you can see once again that I'm not adding confusion by giving them multiple next steps. I'm giving them one clear next step of stopping by the next steps table and talking to our youth pastor and getting their questions answered there. That's the next thing that they're going to do. Now, what the next step is, I'm really indifferent on this. It could be signing up through a QR code that you have on the screen behind you. It could be filling out a card that someone grabbed in their bulletin. What the next step is doesn't matter as much as that you have one clear next step. So the framework again is feel, spiel, and reel. Tell the story, give the details, invite them to take a step. It's really that simple. Now that we've covered the framework, I do want to take a second to help you decide which announcements should make the cut. One of the biggest mistakes that I see so many churches making is announcing everything that they can possibly think of and thinking that every single ministry should have an equal weight when it comes to church announcements. This is a wrong way to think about it. In fact, at my church, the rule is if an announcement does not affect at least 50% of our church audience, it's not something that we're going to be announcing from the front. Now, with that fictional example that I just gave you about youth camp, while maybe 50% of people aren't eligible to go to youth camp, it's our guess that at least 50% of people are going to be affected by our youth camp. So whether they're a student that's going, or a parent that has a student, or a grandparent that wants their grandchild to go to youth camp, it's something that affects a lot of people within our church. But it's not a hard and fast rule, but I think generally speaking, if something doesn't affect 50% of people, it's probably something that's best left for an email communication or some other way of getting that information out there in the future. And let me share a couple of things that I've picked up over the years that are absolute announcement killers. One of them is the "and just one more thing" mentality. How many times have you gotten up there and you thought to yourself, oh my goodness, I forgot we have this event coming up, or someone approaches you during worship saying, don't forget to announce this. You need to resist that temptation to pivot on your announcements. If you haven't planned for it, do your best to not incorporate any last minute announcements up there. Here's another thing that I noticed in a big announcement killer is using insider language. My church announcement team very famously did some of this back when I was pastoring a church, and we had groups that we called Journey Community Groups, but internally we referred to them as JCGs. And if you've been around our church any length of time, you would have already known what a JCG is. It's a Journey Community Group. But you know who didn't know is our first-time visitors. And if someone was there and they were new and they hear you have to go to a JCG, well, they'd have no clue what we were even talking about. So be really focused in making sure not to give insider language in your announcements. And remember this too, is sometimes people try to incorporate overwhelming enthusiasm. We think that announcement people have to be the most boisterous and loudest people in our church. And a lot of times that's just covering for bad structure and bad story. Remember to be yourself when you're giving church announcements. You don't have to be someone that you aren't just because that's how you've seen other people do announcements. Take the time, prepare, plan out your feel, spiel, and reel, and then just be yourself, and you'll find your announcements are much more effective. One thing that a lot of churches do as part of their announcements is they incorporate the giving time. And while I didn't cover that in this video, I have made a complete video that shares exactly how I recommend churches do the offering talk each and every week. This is something that so many churches miss, and I think this is a great video for you to watch next.